He's confident in his knowledge and skills while also never taking himself too seriously. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Read the Right Thing Book Reviews. I'm Eric. Thanks for watching. Stephen Rinella is an American author, podcaster, and host of the television show Meat Eater. He's written 6 books about wildlife, hunting, and cooking. I've been a big fan of his since I discovered his show a few years ago. I've always been somewhat interested in hunting, even though I've never fully dove into the sport. Growing up, I did my hunter safety when I was 12, but since then, I think I've only been on one hunt. I went dove hunting with a friend and his dad, and we didn't even see one single dove. So the only thing we really shot at was a dead tree. It seems to me that hunting can be kind of a difficult sport to break into. And I was the first one in my family to even attempt it. Hunting is a sport where you need someone to introduce and teach you how to do it. I think you need to be around people who are passionate about it. Or maybe that's just my excuse for why I haven't gotten into it. Either way, the show Meat Eater really scratches my itch of hunting, and that's probably good enough for me for now. This book, American Buffalo, it has 2 main threads. One is about the history of buffalo in America. This thread is full of quirky facts and history. The other thread is the author's own adventure in the Alaskan wilderness hunting a herd of buffalo. My favorite part of the Meat Eater show is Rinella's narration. In his narration, his love for nature, conservation, and hunting is evident and contagious. The passion that the author brings to that show is also clear in this book. The demise of the buffalo is discussed and deconstructed. I was always under the impression that settlers of the West were solely responsible for the killing of all the buffalo. However, that is only a part of the entire history. Indians gaining horses from the Spanish, white trappers introducing guns, and the Western Railroad and industrialization ultimately led to the demise of the buffalo. No one during that time understood that the resource would dry up, and industrialization just made it easier and more convenient to kill buffalo. They really didn't know what they were doing until it was too late. I spoke about presentism in my review of Günter Grass's The Tin Drum. Presentism is judging the past with modern values and concepts, and I think that applies to this story in this book as well. In the present, we know that all those people wastefully killing thousands of buffalo, that they were making a massive mistake. But those people at the time couldn't grasp the finiteness of the source. A lot of those people were poor and they had nothing, so they're really just trying to make a living. In an interview I saw on YouTube, Stephen Rinella says that he has a feeling that he also would have joined in those hunts. He says there were evil players, but not that everyone who hunted buffalo were evil. They were just making mistakes, as we are right now. Rinella says that in 100 years, he's sure people will look back at all of our idiotic mistakes and think of how stupid we were. They'll probably sit around thinking and asking, how could we be so stupid? The interesting thing with the buffalo is, ultimately it was hunters who ended up also being the people to save the buffalo. Rinella's own quest began when he found the buffalo skull in Montana. Finding that skull catapulted him on a journey across the nation to learn all the facts that he could, and ultimately ended in the Alaskan wilderness with his own hunt. From the New York City Zoo to buffalo shoots in New Mexico to his own hunt in Alaska, Rinella takes you on a journey and educates you on all the facts you'd ever want to know about buffalo. My favorite part of the book was the author's own hunt and his explanation for why he loves to hunt. The other thread, the history of the buffalo, although interesting, can be a bit long-winded at times. Although my favorite fact that I learned is why cigars are called stogies, and that was a fact that was just in the footnotes. I like Rinella as an author and podcast host and host of the show because he's confident in his knowledge and skills while also never taking himself too seriously. If you like nature and travel writing or are interested in buffalo or hunting, then this book will be the right thing for you. I haven't looked at Rinella's other books, but I would read one again. Here's a part where Stephen Rinella talks about what he's doing with that buffalo skull he found. When I found the buffalo skull on that September day in Montana's Madison Mountains, I padded it carefully with a fleece jacket and strapped it to the outside of my backpack with a few bungee cords. There was something very enticing about the skull. It seemed so perfectly symbolic, as though it stood for much more than the one animal that died and left it behind. At night, sitting around the campfire, I stared at the skull so much that I started to feel like Shakespeare's Hamlet, when he finds the skull of his old friend Yorick and launches into a speech about how even the great and mighty can be reduced to dust. My fascination with the skull was accompanied by a nagging curiosity about its rarity and value. I wondered whether it was cool in only a personal way, like a painting your niece makes for you, or in a more general and universal way, like that other people would be jealous. After a few days of lugging it around in the mountains, I finally got a chance to find out. I left my brothers and walked down Sentinel Creek to the trailhead where I'd parked my van. When I got there, I was happy to see a few guys loading some horses into a trailer. I figured they'd be a good audience for the skull. Anyone who owns a horse is sure to understand the value of Western iconography. I handled the skull in such a way that they couldn't miss it. Facing them, I unlashed it from my pack, loosened some dirt in the brain cavity with a stick, and poured the dirt out. Some small beetles and rodent-chewed pine nut husks spilled out as well. I held it up over my head to give the underside a careful study. I stayed in that position for some time, waiting for a collective, "Good Lord, he found a buffalo skull," but they said nothing. This worried me. I started to think that maybe I hadn't found a buffalo skull, and that I was getting all excited about some wayward domestic cow that had wandered into the mountains and died. Maybe it was a weird breed of cow with a weird-shaped head that I was unfamiliar with. I anxiously got in my van and drove down a long Forest Service road to its intersection with Highway 287. I turned west. The road curved through the mountains for a while and then dropped down to the northern bank of Earthquake Lake. The lake began to form at 11:37 p.m. on August 17, 1959, when an earthquake along the face of the Madison Range dumped a mountainside into the Madison River. The debris completely blocked the river's flow and buried 19 people, mostly campers. The chimney on the Old Faithful Inn, miles away in Yellowstone National Park, fell through the roof. So that's just a taste of the way Rinella writes this story. It's very personal and also has lots of facts. Was this book, American Buffalo, the right thing for me? I would say yes. I really enjoyed the book. I loved all the facts, but ultimately, it was the author's own hunt that kept me reading more. So that was my review of American Buffalo by Steven Rinella. If you enjoyed this review, please hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, read the right thing.